welcome to Dead Reckoning TV. I'm your host, Jay Friesen, with Dr. Brian Mattson, and this week we're looking at the first of a series of alternate views on misery, suffering, and death. And this week, why one of those views should just give suffering a hug. Brian, flesh that out for us.
Well, Jay, the number one worldview in the world, in the Western world at least today, is a worldview that resigns itself to suffering, misery, and death. What's that worldview, Brian? What are you talking about? That's a pretty provocative claim. Well, this is the worldview of naturalism. Sometimes goes by the term materialism. It's embodied in a worldview that is influenced by Charles Darwin, the neo-Darwinist evolutionary movement. The idea is that the world is this closed system of physical laws and cause and effect, that there's nothing outside of the cosmos, there's nothing transcendent, and what it is an impersonal, blind, mechanistic process of gradual evolution. And so the idea of naturalism is that all you need to describe the world is matter, time, energy, and chance. I mean, those are your four ingredients: matter, time, energy, and chance. Has created the entire cosmos. That's the world, the universe that we're living in. Of course, notice what I said. It was a blind process. There's no intelligence outside of this universe guiding or shaping the world. In other words, this is not a morally ordered world, with good or bad, right or wrong. This is a world in which stuff happens. Matter, time, energy, and chance just produces things. That's the universe we live in. Well, what do you do with suffering, misery, and death if that's the kind of universe that we live in? It's actually natural. That's the natural state of affairs, is, decay, certain species getting weeded out. The survival of the fittest means that the unfittest pass out of existence, and we're just on this never-ending process. But you wouldn't say that, well, that's bad, or that's morally wrong, or we should get really upset about that. It's just what's happening. So it's not a morally ordered universe, and if that's the kind of universe we have, then really you're just resigning yourself that suffering, misery, and death is natural. Death is a part of life, and that's resigning yourself to it. Now, I know that a lot of people take that worldview. A lot of people really think that that's the cosmos that we live in. And that's okay, but I want to challenge you, if that's your worldview, to really, really count the cost. Because there is a significant cost and trade-off to you taking that kind of a view of the universe. And here's the cost, here's the trade-off. The late atheist Christopher Hitchens was just such a person who believed that this is not a morally meaningful universe, that it is random and it's chance and it's chaos, because he was a neo-Darwinist and he was an atheist and he didn't believe in God. So on the one hand, he was all into, don't come to me with your morality and tell me that, whoever I'm sleeping with matters to anybody. He was very adamant about that. And yet it's amazing to me that Christopher Hitchens had things he hated, things that really got him upset. He got irate. He hated jihadists, Muslim jihadists, and terrorists who would kill innocent people. He hated Roman Catholic priests who abused children. Now, I just want to say to Christopher, I can't anymore because he's now the late Christopher Hitchens, I just want to say, and perhaps you think like him, count the cost. Because to the extent you say this is not a morally ordered universe, that this is just time and matter and energy and chance, you lose the right to complain. You lose the right to complain. You no longer have a high moral horse to ride. You've said there is no such horse to ride. Count the cost. If that's the way the world is, if that's what you think the world is, you have to resign yourself to tragedy, not get upset about it. You've got to hug tragedy, because that's the way the world is. And if you get upset at tragedy, if you don't like certain things, then in your own worldview, on your own terms, you are being delusional. You're getting upset about something that you can't get upset about. You know, if I spilled the water on the table, I don't blame it on the water. Okay? If we're the accident, if we're all just accidents, then accidents happen. And you don't blame accidents. You don't blame the product of accidents. So the costs are so significant. The stakes are so high. If you take that worldview, we're going to resign ourselves to suffering and death. You lose the right to complain. And you know what? You know better than that. You know better than that. Because when some tragedy happens, you instinctively know this is not the way it's supposed to be. Something is wrong with the world. You cannot bring yourself to embrace tragedy the way your worldview says you ought to embrace tragedy. You know better in your heart of hearts. And next week, we're going to talk about another way of dealing with sin, suffering, and death, and that is not resigning yourself to it, but denying it exists in the first place.
Thanks so much, Brian. I do look forward to next week as we take a look at why suffering could all be in your head. If you'd like to email us, give us a shout, drtv@redfutonfilms.com. Subscribe to us on Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, wherever you like to watch movies. And we'll see you next week. I'm Jay Friesen, and this is Dr. Brian Mattson, and this is Dead Reckoning TV.
Talk about denial. Talk about denying misery, suffering, and death, hurting and harming other people, when your answer at the end of the day is, does it matter? Really? You tell that to the parents. You tell that to the parents of the children murdered at Sandy Hook. You tell that to people whose lives are destroyed. We all falter. Does it matter?